That we are back. It seems there's some technical issue there. But fortunately, we are back. So I just give you a brief introduction about Ont Id, which is the identity framework of Ontology. Ont Id is part of Ontology products and services based on the blockchain infrastructure with smart contract, dev services, and digital asset services. And Ont Id is one of our distributed trust protocols and products, which is have closely cooperate with the other components like DDXF, our decentralized data exchange framework, and onto our client. So let's begin. Actually, Ont Id is a framework based on the World Wide Web Consortium, which is an abbreviation of W3C, the Decentralized Identifier Protocol, that uses the blockchain and cryptographic technology to connect people, data, and a service. The key concept of the Decentralized Identifier Protocol is try to provide a scenario of disintermediation between different users and their customers. So it is organized like a peer-to-peer network as the blockchain network, but in a front-end use case. And also the DID protocol is open, so which can apply for multiple identities. For example, the people, the assets, the objects, and also affairs. When we are talking about blockchain, the assets, they are token, and affairs, actually, they are just transactions. So this can turn to be the real entities like peoples and objects. And then there is a branch of network protocols of trust anchors. The trust anchors is kind of a certificate of claims to satisfy multidimensional trust endorsement. They are trying to provide the trust. When we are talking about the trust, we need a trust endorsement. With the backend terms, we just call it claim. Actually, a claim is just like a piece of asset. And then as the presentation of claims, we have credentials. So for now, all of us, we just use credentials across different systems. We bring our scholarship credentials to maybe our employees, and this turns to be a certain kind of ecosystem called the trust ecosystem. And then because we are talking about the identifier backend, it is real data. So the data security and the privacy protection should be concerned. And the key idea is we try to provide a self-sovereign identity management. And as a tool, as a trust ready to go real business tool, we need to complete the ID management tool. Like we just try to log the resources, indexing, and the query for identities, and as well as their credentials. What Ontology did is based on the DID protocols. We can say as traditional IT systems, they're more about information. But when we are talking about information technology, all of them, they are just based on the data. And because of the blockchain, as we know, that it is about a digital asset. And backend, we just call it address. When we are talking about data storage in traditional IT system, there is organizations like token, which means certain kind of right to operate on certain kind of data. And when we are talking about blockchain digital asset, we have got our assetizations. We also use the term token. And Ontology Sync, we can just join them together. In this case, we create assetization for real data, and also the real right to operating on some data. And here we have both token and a D token. Based on the token technology by trust endorsement and as well as the blockchain project, we can create our dApps to serve certain kind of business. And when we are talking about how to get ready to go for real business, because whenever we are using blockchain, all the token exchange, they just work in smart contract. And when we get prepared for the real business to go, we need a claim. Also, whenever we used, we just call it credentials. About claim, we can say which is a proof of the capability to own the digital asset. And this turns to be to prove the data. Also, based on it, it is just related with the Ont Id. So the Ont Id stands not only for the people, the end users, but also the data, the token of the data, the right of the data. And with the technology of claim, of Ont Id, we can get ready for the business, and with the token exchange on the blockchain project, we have our business technology. In this case, we can resolve certain kind of problems, which is, in most cases, we say just the lack of support for multiple roles of one individual. And also, the fragment sources to verify data and build trust whenever we are trying to use different data mostly cross systems. We just call it the data interoperability. But whenever we are in DID systems, we just use the term disintermediation. In this case, the customers and their end users that can communicate with each other directly. And before the transaction goes to the blockchain, they can use claim, the credentials. And whenever the system is created based on the blockchain, everything goes to public. So it is there that we can create a reputation assessment based on the certain kind of human behaviors across different systems. And also the entity ID not only stands for the human beings, the data, but also smart devices. So we can serve the Internet of Things as well. And Ont Id can provide a solution in 4 ways: the multi-dimension trust support, also the access to multi-dimensional trusted sources, and also verifiable claim, or maybe verifiable credentials, qualified trust assessment schema based on multi-dimensional trusted sources. Also, the Open Ont Id protocol is compatible with IoT identification protocols. In this case, we can have our project to serve different systems, not only for the web systems, but also the Internet of Things systems. And based on the Ont Id, we are providing the self-sovereign management. And also, we create a certain kind of solutions for application developers. Maybe they are not familiar with blockchain, but they just use the blockchain technology to create trust endorsement for their own systems. Also, whenever join the ontology ecosystem, anybody can provide verification services for Ont Id users, and also to provide a certain kind of claims and credentials on everything they need. Because whenever we are talking about trust, we just trust our friends because they trust something or somebody. So Ont Id allows individuals to safely manage their digital identity in different systems and also across different systems, and also provide identity interoperability in multiple systems. And also anyone else can use Ont Id to sign in any of the cloud of the applications that uses Ont Id. And whenever we are talking about data privacy and data protection, we provide the selective disclosure protocols. In this case, any of the user, they can keep their information secretly. Whenever they try to use, they can manage and provide the selective disclosure to the issuers. And whenever Ont Id to work with the business partners, there's enterprises. Any enterprises could build its own new DID systems with Ont Id. And because for now we have more than 200,000 users from Ontology, they are using Ont Id. So they can be the potential users for business partners uses the Ont Ids. And whenever we are talking about how to develop with Ont Id technology, so any existing IT systems, including the web systems or IoT systems, they just do their own business based on certain kind of data. We just provide Ont Id based on data owner, based on data operator, or any kind of roles inside these systems and bring them on chain. And a part of that, all of the data can have its identifier. We just turn the data token into on-chain token. And with the blockchain, with ontology, we provide the update token, the access token, which can be quite similar with non-fungible token or semi-fungible tokens. And also, now we have a branch of trust anchors, which provide credentials for entities. For example, the Identimind, the Plate, Shakti Pro, Four Stops, Sotage, and CFCA. So this is the backend ontology Ont Id. Hereby, I just welcome Erick to introduce more about our use case.
Great. I don't have the slide deck. Could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I wanted to talk about some of the use cases that we have for Ont Id and what exactly it can be used for. The first and most basic foundational idea is to give identity to people, and not just a single identity, but to give multiple identities to people. So you as a person your professional identity is different from your social identity, which can be different from your online identity, which can be different from your play identity. So for each of these, you don't necessarily want other entities. You don't want your employer to know what games you play. You don't want your, your whatever your company to know your online browsing habits. Maybe when you go and apply for a new job, you want to highlight different areas of your life. And when you go to a school, you don't necessarily need to show them everything about you. So the idea behind this multi-source identity and with Ont ID is that you can select which attributes of your life you want to share with different entities, so you have much more control over your data. So you can see on the left, multi-source identity system for people, things like preference, things like skills, characteristics, any actions that you've taken. If you want to say like track your browsing history, or you want to participate in different ecosystems and use different services, it's useful to implement that tracking because it can help you make smarter decisions about yourself. But everything belongs to you, so you're able to decide which companies you share it with and potentially where you can monetize it. So you can choose to sell your data to companies, but it's up to you, right? So it's your choice. It kind of flips the business model on its head. Right now, companies, they control your data, they collect data about you, and they don't tell you. You don't own your data, they own it, they sell it to other companies, they're profiting off of you. This takes that and flips it on your head. You're in control of your data, you own your data, you choose which companies you want to share, and you choose who you want to share it with, right? So you have schools, families, classmates, friends, banks, the government, nonprofits. These are all different groups and entities that you can choose to share different parts of your identity with. Taking upon that idea and expanding it to objects. So not only does Ont ID work for giving identity to people, but it also works for giving identity to objects. This becomes really useful for getting into the Internet of Things. Say, for example, you have solar panels. If you have smart solar panels, you want to keep track of how much renewable electricity the solar panel is producing, which you need to be able to assign an identity to it, right? You have to assign an address to it. So you can keep track of a solar panel and you can, for example, pay for it using Ont so that the solar panel keeps operating, right? So you're paying to use the solar panel. You could give a relationship to other people. So you could have ownership over a solar panel, right? People buy shares in solar farms to own renewable energy, even if it's not renewable energy installed over their house. So giving this multiple source identity to objects is just as useful as giving it to people, because you're able to explore all of these use cases with ownership and with transactions for the Internet of Things. We go to the next slide. Whoever's controlling the slide deck, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so two more use cases: distributed data exchange. This is what we were talking about earlier. Once you issue out these certificates, say you have a university that's issuing out academic certificates or degrees and diplomas, you have companies that are, or banks that are issuing out credit score reports. So you're on time with your payments, or you're paying back loans on time, whatever the case may be. You have governments that are issuing out identification information like your age, your demographic information. What can you actually do with all this data, right? So it's one thing to like collect all this data, now you own it, but it's another thing to create this marketplace where you can then go and take this data and you can choose to monetize it, and you could choose to sell it to other companies. So a company that's, for example, doing surveys and they want to survey everyone who has a degree from a certain university, everyone who's a male that's over age of 24 that has a degree from this university, they would query the Ontology blockchain for this information, and then the people who want to choose to participate can choose to participate and give that data, right? And they would earn a reward for choosing to share that data. So this is the distributed data exchange that we've built, which is that marketplace layer on top of the Ont ID claim issuance system. Another example would be a collaborative system. So this isn't so much a marketplace, but rather this is taking the identity through kind of putting it all together in the example of the medical field. So in the medical field, right, you have a lot of different components. You have doctors, you have hospitals, you have patients, you have pharmacies. So using Ont Id, you could have this system where a patient sees a doctor and the doctor issues out a prescription to the patient. So there's a huge problem in the medical industry right now that people fake prescriptions because a doctor just signs it with their name, right? They sign it with this ink on paper, which is very archaic. What a doctor should be doing is they should have a cryptographic signature on behalf of the doctor and behalf of the hospital, so that when they issue out a prescription, it's cryptographically verified and it's verifiable by math, right? So you can't forge prescriptions, you can't forge these fake documents. So then that patient could then take that prescription to a pharmacy, and the pharmacy could look at the cryptographic proof that's attached to the prescription and then verify it and be able to, give that medicine. So that would save a whole industry right there, right? But that's an example of issuing out a claim by a claim issuer, in this case being a doctor. The patient would get that claim to themselves. They would be able to take that claim to a pharmacy, which would be the claim verifier, right? They would verify that the claim is true by checking it against the blockchain, by checking the proof, to then verify it and then issue out, or to complete the transaction, giving them the prescription or giving them the medicine that's associated with the prescription. Next slide. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about, so decentralized inclusive financial services. What does this mean? This kind of imagines all the financial services that you would think of, between credit scores, between funds that people can invest in and put their money in. Right now with decentralized finance, a lot of it is collateralized based. So because you don't know who's paying you don't know who you're giving loans to on decentralized finance, the solution is to just make them pay more than that's due. And then if they default on their loan, you have the collateral that gets liquidated. So an example would be MakerDAO. If you want to issue DAI, or you want to mint DAI, which is a stable coin pegged to $1, you have to collateralize 150% of ETH, and you get back about like 50 to 75% of the DAI that you're accounted for, right? So that over collateralization, that extra 100 or that extra 50%, that gets liquidated if you don't pay back the loan. That's how they kind of protect themselves for loaning. But that's not how it works in most of the real world. In the real world, you have credit scores. So if someone, they take out a loan, their identity is attached to that loan. So if they default on that loan, that hurts their credit score and hurts their ability to get a future loan. Right now, that doesn't exist on blockchain because you don't know whose identity are attached to which addresses, or to which addresses, right? So that changes with Ont Id, because now you can have, in a decentralized way, you can have identity attached to addresses. You can have credit scores attached to addresses. So when you create a decentralized finance system, you don't need to over collateralize. You can just look at the credit score that's decentralized, that's attached to that Ont Id, and then you can make a decision whether or not, if you're a bank or if you're a fund, whether or not you want to give them a loan. That's an example of an inclusive financial service. And then we also have distributed content generation and trade. So that's the last example that we'll go over. The idea of that is the idea of content. So, if you have copyright, or if you have images that are assets that are copyrighted or patented, you're able to license those out. And because you have the right to them, because you license them out using the Ont Id, that it keeps track of who owns what patents, who owns what copyrights, you can license it out to another address, and then they can use it. And as they use it, they're paying you back, or they're paying you for using it. So there's the attribution, there's royalties, all of those things can be integrated into Ont Id. And we have partners that we're working with on that now. For example, OGQ, which is a large digital assets provider, where they have millions of creators that are, or they don't have, they have many creators that have created millions of digital assets that are copyrighted, right? So like artists or sound effect makers, music artists that create these different sound effects, images, works of art and they've copyrighted it and they license it out to other people. So that's something else that can be built on Ont Id. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so we have lots of global ecosystem partners, like mentioned, the different partners that we have. Not everything is related to Ont Id because we have a lot of, we have a general contract it's a general smart contract platform as well. So we have a lot of non-fungible token projects. We have a lot of decentralized finance projects. We have a lot of wallets. We have a lot of exchanges that are all part of the Ontology ecosystem. We have a lot of games as well. One of our areas of interest is this Ont Id, and I believe that it has some of the largest potential. But the greater ecosystem as a whole is very expansive. So there's many different opportunities on Ontology and things that we are exploring. That's everything that I have. We can pass it off.
Let's have a look at the questions we got so far on Ont Id. We started to collect some questions on the Google form, and also some of our community members are asking questions on the community and on our common area. So do feel free to leave us your questions in the comment area. Okay, so the first question I got from our Vietnamese community is, what are Ont Id transaction speeds and transaction fees? Currently, does Ont Id have any program to help users to reduce transaction fees?
So the transaction fees of making one Ont Id
Erick,
transaction.
would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, the transaction fees of one Ont Id transaction right now is 0.01 ONG. So that's about like a fraction of a penny, right? So it's very, very affordable. And that's the gas fees. So just to issue a claim is 0.01 ONG. Now, someone can take that and build a business on top of it, where if you use my service, or if I have a marketplace, I'm issuing out these claims, I could choose to, if I create a dApp, I can choose to charge an additional transaction fee on top of the gas fee to make a profit, right? Because dApps have to find a way to make themselves sustainable. So I could increase the fee, and then I keep the extra percentage of the fee based off of the Ont Id transaction for my application. So that's a business model. But the base level, the base layer gas fee is 0.01 ONG, which is the same cost as making a regular transaction on Ontology. So yeah, it's very affordable. It's minuscule. It's like negligible.
Great, thank you, Erick. So next question is, this is more general. So what is your long-term vision about the industry with Ontology project is working at? Cryptocurrency industry is always thriving. What plans do you have to keep up with the technology trends? Ning, what's your opinion on this?
For my understanding, whenever we are talking about the blockchain, it's more about cryptocurrency. And also, we just we just call it data asset. Whenever we are talking about the Ont ID, we have the data IDs, and then we can have the data token, the right to operate on certain kind of data, to get a data access token, the update token. So all these tokens can be digitized. So digitization of the data token is a way to combine blockchain with the traditional IT systems. And whenever there is data interoperability across multiple systems, the blockchain can provide a commons for all of the different systems with like syntactic mediation, the semantic mediation, as well as abstract data interfaces. We can provide the trust endorsement for data interoperability. And maybe this can be the next use of the token, the digital asset, across different systems based on traditional data systems. Maybe.
Thank you, Ning. Our next question is, how secure is Ont ID when saving our cryptocurrencies? And what plans do you have for the future?
Actually, Ont ID uses the same cryptographic algorithms with our ontology addresses. So all the token goes to our addresses, but Ont ID make the full use of the real data tokens. So in this case, whenever we are talking about the Ont ID, we provide the proof to do certain kind of operation on certain kind of data. And then we will use claim to provide the proof. And with Ont ID, we can do real execution. But about the value assessment and as well as the digital asset, we use wallet, which is our address. So that's it.
Good, thank you. Let's take a question from the comment area. It's from Pinos. He was asking, since you introduced about Ont ID, how can this grow adoption? Erick, would you like to share your views on it?
Yes, so that I understand the question. So you're asking about on adoption of Ont ID specifically, or adoption of ontology in general?
I think it's about Ont ID.
Okay.
One of the audience also asked about the possibilities to add Ont ID on Paraglue.
Ont ID on what?
On the Turkish exchange wallet, Paraglue.
Oh, I see. So right now, what exchanges are integrating are the ontology asset addresses. So that's the address that you send crypto to. So you send your ONT to. So now for the multi-source Ont ID, the way that works is that you can have multiple Ont ID addresses, which are different from the typical ONT address you use to hold your ONT. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same, which means that for exchanges that want to integrate Ont ID, they will have to do a little extra work than the typical just adding a new address. So it's a little yeah, there's a couple of steps there that need to be done to integrate with exchanges, but exchanges could integrate it because it's not that difficult. It still all relies on a blockchain, so they technologically have the infrastructure. So that's definitely possible. I think our vision for it is to give people many different ways that they can interact with Ont Id. So people can access their Ont Id and access their claims from the mobile app, right, from the Onto wallet. They can create their Ont Id. They can share their Ont Id. They can collect claims and they can share the claims. But you can also interact with it on your computer using the Cyano wallet, which is a browser extension you install. And then there, similarly, you can create an Ont Id and you can collect claims and you can share claims. So having the multiple access points to interface with your Ont Id, I think that's very important. And in terms of use cases, I think like the most strongest use cases right now are definitely for academic credentials and copyrights and patents, because that's where there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of fraudulent activity there, right? Using Ont Id for signing cryptographic signatures. Think of projects like DocuSign, where you're shifting away from signing papers using physical signatures that are just like you signing your name, and we're moving more into people signing documents with cryptographic proofs. So I think that the area of signing documents and those use cases that are centered around that, that's definitely like the first and foremost area where this technology is going to have a very quick, immediate impact. So that's an area that we are focusing on.
Thank you, Eric. That's a great answer. I hope this is very helpful information for T access. The next question is, as we know, every successful project has a few stories behind the scenes. What's the story behind Ontology success? What was the vision when it first emerged as an idea? Are there any special prototypes or upcoming Ontology updates that you want to show or share with us? It's from our Philippines community. Ning, would you like to answer this one?
As a technical project, so I think the story behind Ontology is more about the technical side. So we just provide the link, trust endorsement backend for the Ontology to provide trust endorsement across different systems, which not only focus on the financial services. That's why we provide the Ont Id and the token series of protocols. So hopefully, while we provide a branch of high performance platform based on the Ontology technology, is we are trying to serve the real business. That is why we just have our slogan ready for business. But for the next phase, we will keep moving on with new technology like the multiple virtual machines, multi-VM. We support Wasm VM, Wasm Jet, and also we have our prototype of layer 2. And we have our maybe Ont Id 2.0 in the next phase. Hopefully, we can serve the real web-based applications. Maybe for the real customers, they are not care about what is the backend. They hope the blockchain project can also provide performance to serve the internet like web applications. So if our technology can support, maybe this can help the real business in a new phase of trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Ning. Let's move on to the next question. This question is about Ontology's recent listing on Binance, the Ontology Pact token, ONT33D. So the question is, with the issuance of ONT33D Pact token, what does it bring to the company? How will Ontology community benefit from this? Erick, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, could you repeat the question, please?
So the question is, with the issuance of ONT33D Pact token on Binance, what does it bring to the project? How will Ontology community benefit from this?
Yeah, so the main thing, Ont33D or Ont, yeah, that, so the Binance backed, the ONT backed coin on Binance chain is very important because it gives people of the Binance ecosystem a way to trade, to decentralize trade their ONT tokens on the Binance DEX, right, in a decentralized way, without having to go through a central custodian. So, right, the idea is that if you have this asset that's on the Binance chain that's pegged to ONT, someone who wants to expose themselves to the ONT market and have their token, you know, fluctuate. Maybe they want to trade ONT and BNB. Maybe you like both of those coins, but you don't want to use an exchange like Binance or like Bittrex or, you know, whatever. You want to rely entirely on the decentralized infrastructure. So that is enabled by these Binance-backed tokens. And Binance also has wrapped Bitcoin as well and wrapped Ethereum. So if you wanted to, if you're a big proponent of decentralization and you want to own custody of your assets and own the private keys, but you still want to be able to trade between ONT and Bitcoin, trade between ONT and Ethereum, trade between ONT and Binance Coin, by using the Binance DEX and using the ONT33 that's on Binance chain, you're able to do it all in a decentralized way. So you don't need to go through, you don't need to go through KuCoin, you don't need to go through a centralized exchange. You're able to do those trades all in a decentralized way. So I think that's what makes it very important.
I agree. Okay, I think that covers for the Q&A session for today. And thank you very much for sending your questions. And thank you, Erick and Ning, for your time.
Thank you.
If you have any further questions, please do feel free to join us on our Telegram community or ask us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn. You can find Ontology in many different places. And tomorrow we will be talking about Onto. So stay tuned on our Twitter, and we will share a Google form for you to submit questions in advance. And it will be the same time tomorrow. Do join us. Thank you very much.